Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. In my favorites folder, I have the opinions, videos, with the opinions of Evander Holyfield, Lennox Lewis, and David Haye, three guys who have held the heavyweight title, about the upcoming Klitschko Joshua fight. And I have to tell you, I'm stunned. Right? Lennox Lewis sees the fight the way I do. That Joshua's not ready. That Klitschko's going to win the fight. But to my surprise, and I mean this, my utter amazement, right? Evander Holyfield and David Haye are picking Anthony Joshua. It's a shocker to me. I have to tell you, when I heard the line on the fight, I was astonished. I was online recently on an online sports book, and I noticed they had Klitschko as a plus 195 underdog. I'm really puzzled. Now, David Haye lays out his case for Anthony Joshua. It's worth hearing from David Haye directly. Again, the video's in my favorites folder. He feels that Vladimir Klitschko won't know what to do when big, strong Anthony Joshua comes inside, throws two left jabs, and then starts throwing power punches behind it. The idea is that all Klitschko knows how to do is to lean forward and grab guys. And that if the referee does his job and doesn't allow the excessive holding, then Vladimir Klitschko is not going to have a plan B. That's the idea, right? Holyfield says that Joshua, who has yet to go 12 rounds in a fight, right? Who has yet to go, 9 rounds in a fight, that Joshua is a complete fighter, right? I'm guessing he's judging that by Joshua's wins over who? Dominique Brazil? Charles Martin? Well, let me just make a few points. I want to respond to David Haye's video, right? First, I'm expecting Vladimir Klitschko to actually be throwing punches back. In terms of the risk involved, I would say the risk is far greater for Anthony Joshua than it is for Vladimir Klitschko from a defensive perspective. Right? Anthony Joshua has a jab. It's not Vladimir Klitschko's jab. It's not. Right? Vladimir Klitschko's right hand, his straight right, is as good, in my opinion, as any punch Anthony Joshua has in his arsenal. Joshua has a pretty good straight right hand too, right? You saw that in the Charles Martin fight. But he can't frame it like Vladimir Klitschko. Also, in terms of in the pocket skills, forget holding, just defense up close. Vladimir Klitschko can lean back on his back foot, right? Vladimir Klitschko can roll with punches. Who do you think is harder to find in the pocket? Anthony Joshua or Vladimir Klitschko? You know, let me say too that Tyson Fury, who I consider to be a better fighter than Anthony Joshua, right? Fury just has to get healthy. In my opinion, Tyson Fury has a better inside game than Anthony Joshua. Revisit Tyson Fury against Derek Chisora, right? Now, Derek Chisora just gave Dillian Whyte all he could handle. Who knows who really won that fight, right? That's a fight where the judges say one thing, the guys at the pub are debating that ad nauseum, right? Because you're going to have a crowd that saw the fight and that felt Derek Chisora won the fight. Well, when Tyson Fury fought Derek Chisora, who can get inside, who can destabilize guys, right? Who has a lot of persistence, who has stamina. Tyson Fury gets inside in that fight and shows that he knows how to deal with the guy inside. Now, if the shortcut to beating Vladimir Klitschko is getting inside, why did Tyson Fury, who to me is very smart, why did Tyson Fury stay on his back foot, dance around on the outside in beating Klitschko? Could it possibly be because Vladimir Klitschko has a very high KO ratio after a career fighting world-class competition? Right? World-class competition. So these folks who seem to believe that Anthony Joshua is going to get deep inside on Vladimir Klitschko, and that Vladimir Klitschko's only hope of survival is going to be excessive holding. I mean, understand, David Haye feels that Vladimir Klitschko might get disqualified in this fight for excessive holding. Right? If folks think that that's Vladimir's only strategy inside, they're kidding themselves. Now, I'll agree, Vladimir Klitschko prefers some distance. I'll also agree Vladimir Klitschko's not a guy who goes to the body a lot. I'll agree with both of those things. But folks, can we agree that Anthony Joshua is not exactly Mike Tyson on the inside? Right? People equating Anthony Joshua with some kind of inside guy who you're going to be forced to hold, to me, are missing just how stiff and upright this guy is and just how cautious he is. Didn't Dominique Brazil go a few rounds with him? By the way, the over-under on that fight, as I recall, it was something like 3 rounds. Right? The hype, the expectations of Anthony Joshua were that misplaced. So, just understand that a man who's been in the ring with Vladimir Klitschko, right, David Haye, is picking Anthony Joshua in the fight. Right? Another guy who I feel is going to be in boxing's Hall of Fame, Carl Froch, is picking Anthony Joshua in the fight. Right? I'm guessing that the Anthony Joshua bubble is biggest in the UK. Right? That they're going by public sentiment a bit here. Right? That seems to have Anthony Joshua being viewed in such a way that he's the favorite in the betting line. But wow, ask yourself, and I'm serious about this, given that, you know, Vladimir Klitschko's been fighting some tough customers. When was the last time Vladimir Klitschko got knocked out in the first 3 rounds of a fight? Folks, you have to go back several years. Several. His only loss in the last 10 years went the distance against Tyson Fury. Right? This idea that Anthony Joshua, who doesn't remind me of Usain Bolt in terms of his foot speed, right? He's a plodding heavyweight. He's not a guy who is cutting off the ring. I haven't seen the Anthony Joshua footage that looks like Tyson Marvis Frazier, right? He's not a guy who's just cutting off the ring and forcing you to do something. What's that fight? Somebody tell me what that fight was. Quite frankly, if you go back to the Dillian Whyte fight, I thought Dillian Whyte had his moments in the first round of that fight. Right? What's the Joshua fight where he takes the air out the room and is forcing you to do something? No, I'm expecting the guy who's going to be dictating tempo, pacing, everything is going to be the champ who was champ for several years. Right? It's going to be the champ who lost to the very best in the heavyweight division and did so by decision. Right? Let's give Tyson Fury his due. David Haye says in his video that Vladimir Klitschko threw something like 12 punches per round. Right? You know, that's because of his opponent. Vladimir Klitschko usually throws much more than that. Right? Vladimir Klitschko is usually punching you up with a jab. Right? Somebody tell me exactly how Joshua is going to avoid the jab. Let me tell you too, nothing's going to dissuade a young fighter from setting up shop deep in the pocket more than that 2x4 Klitschko jab. That's just going to be taking him out. That Klitschko jab is like a Larry Holmes jab. Folks, it's not a place setter. Right? You suffer through enough rounds of getting hit with that, you're going to be woozy. Right? Most fighters against Klitschko are tentative early. Why? Because they recognize the punching power coming back at them. So, I understand there are people like Vladimir Klitschko outside the UK who also feel Anthony Joshua is the complete fighter and stuff like that. There's no shame in my game. I'll come back on here online after the fight if Anthony Joshua looks great against a great fighter and give him his props. But let's be real here. Anthony Joshua is not the best fighter Vladimir Klitschko has faced. Hell, Klitschko's last opponent was better than Anthony Joshua. Right? But we know Vladimir Klitschko is by far, and I mean by far, the best fighter Anthony Joshua will have faced as a professional. Right? His resume is light on current contenders. Current contenders. Forget greats over the years. Right? He just doesn't. He hasn't fought David Haye. He hasn't fought Tyson Fury, folks. He hasn't fought the best in his own country. So again, I know Christmas was a few days ago, but I think it's still Christmas looking at these betting lines on this Vladimir Klitschko fight. First, if Anthony Joshua has never made it to the 9th round, how's he going to go the distance with Vladimir Klitschko? That's not happening. If you're expecting Anthony Joshua to beat Vladimir Klitschko, do you really think a guy who's never made it to the 9th round is going to outbox Vladimir Klitschko and win on the scorecards? I don't see that happening. So, right, they've made this one easy for us. Klitschko, the underdog, sign me up. Sign me up. Right? I'm getting much better than even money odds. Now it's north of plus 150. Sign me up on that part of the play. And I'll hedge the play with Joshua by KO. Joshua is a KO puncher. Right? Make no mistake though. Forget the odds for a moment here. I'm expecting Klitschko to dominate and stop Joshua. Right? Forget hedges. Let's just talk as boxing fans. Right? Because I just don't know how Joshua, who doesn't strike me as a guy who bends at the waist and stuff like that, who strikes me as a guy who privately knows he was dropped by Dillian Whyte in the amateurs. He was dropped by David Price, you know, in private sparring. Whatever his public image, Joshua knows his chin has been dented before, just like Vladimir Klitschko knows it. So who has the better jab? Who's going to be more comfortable from distance? I think it's Vladimir Klitschko. I think the fight being in the UK is a blessing. Who's going to be pressured for tickets? Who's going to have the press all over him? The local fighter, not the visiting fighter. Right? This idea that Klitschko is washed up because he lost his last fight. Hell, Joshua hasn't fought anyone like Tyson Fury. Why are we judging Klitschko by the Fury fight and not by the Kubrat Pulev fight? Didn't Kubrat Pulev beat Derek Chisora in much more convincing fashion, by the way, than Dillian Whyte? Right? Doesn't Kubrat Pulev have exactly one loss on his record? One loss? That's to Vladimir Klitschko by stoppage. Hasn't Kubrat Pulev beaten Alexander Ustinov? By the way, let me just state the obvious. Anthony Joshua hasn't fought Pulev, hasn't fought Ustinov, hasn't fought Derek Chisora. Right? Think about it. He hasn't fought some major contenders. He hasn't fought Deontay Wilder, hasn't fought Joseph Parker, hasn't fought, Andy Ruiz, right? Hasn't fought champs. And we're equating this green guy with a great champion who ruled the roost for several years, right? And who's beaten people like previously unbeaten, Brian Jennings, right? Previously unbeaten Kubrat Pulev, right? So, yeah, I'll just say much respect professionally for David Haye and Evander Holyfield. Much respect professionally for Carl Froch, right? I just flat out disagree with those guys, right? Gambling's really about risk-taking. I believe the risk is less. Forgive me, maybe it's just crazy, but I believe the risk is less with the guy who has the better resume, who's been in more championship fights, right? Who's only lost one time in 10 years. Who I don't have stories of being dropped in sparring by David Price, right? I just feel more comfortable putting money on Vladimir Klitschko, whatever the odds. Now, if the casino's going to tell me that the guy I'm putting money on is actually the underdog, hey, I'm expecting more beer at the end of this. We'll find out. Anyway, I do hope you visit Lennox Lewis's comments on the fight, right? Lewis, to me, is dead on, right? The heavyweight division is wide open. It wouldn't have been if Tyson Fury was healthy. Because he's not, it's wide open, right? I think he's dead on. I think David Haye, maybe the British newspapers are getting to him. I really don't know. Maybe it's the size and power of Anthony Joshua. The highlights do look dramatic. Right? They do look dramatic. Right? And Evander Holyfield, I'm sure he's very impressed by Joshua's size and power. Hey, great. Just know, if I had one bet to make, who do I think wins the fight? Vladimir Klitschko, right? I don't understand right now, and it's December 29th, 2016. What the hell is going on with the rest of the world? I don't view this fight as that competitive. Anyway, that's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Just thought I'd give a in-the-moment take on some videos I just came across. Thanks for stopping by.